Okay, I guess we have everyone in the meeting now, and I'd like to welcome you folks to our Ag Committee meeting. It's Thursday, March 11th, and we're going to be talking in regards to S67 relating to the right to repair agricultural equipment. And so the committee, I'm Bobby Starr, and I chair the committee from Troy, Vermont. I represent Orleans and Essex County. And Chris?
Morning, Chris Pearson, Senator from Chittenden County. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, I'm Anthony Polina. I represent Washington County.
State Senator Brian Collmore from Rutland County.
And Senator Parent he'll be with us in a bit. He's getting his COVID shot this morning. So he'll be a little bit late. He's from Franklin County. So like to welcome all our guests to the meeting this morning. And we kind of run an informal meeting. We have back and forth, and we don't get too excited. If you've got something to say, just raise your hand, and we'll call on you. But we like to keep it kind of simple and loose, and talk about the issue. So, Toby, you're on the list first, but I don't know if you folks have had a chance to talk together and see if you want to lead off or somebody else does, but you're the first on my list. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I don't mind going first. My name is Toby Melandrinos. I'm a young and beginning farmer, started in the grass-fed meat and hay operations in Wethersfield, Vermont. My background, where I came from, was from Virginia, and I did a lot of larger scale agriculture, doing large scale corn and grains down there and silage, running harvesters and cultivators and whatnot. I've run multiple generations of farming equipment through the years and have gotten quite frustrated with the lack of farmer-friendly repairs that can be done these days. As a large-scale operation, I noticed, it didn't really affect them as much as it would affect myself as a smaller scale trying to grow up, of having to call these dealers to come out, and it's costly when you have to have them just plug in a laptop for $600 each visit. The modern equipment does comes more with production and efficiency these days. A lot of the older tractors, it takes a lot of money to get them up and moving to the same amount of efficiency, both with fuel costs, safety measures, and all that stuff. But when, I have to look at, when I go and update all my equipment, one of the biggest things I have to keep in mind myself is, well, how much is it going to cost me for downtime and sitting out in the field waiting for some guy just to plug it in and get repair codes that I could easily get myself off of my laptop, like I do off my pickup truck or one of my semis or something like that I've fixed in the past. The right to repair bill is important to me because of the hold it puts on the customers who are not mechanically trained, and they have to rely on the equipment company. It kind of puts them at a disadvantage, and it puts us who do know how to repair things at a disadvantage also, because our hands are kind of tied. We're kind of depending on some guy to tell us, oh yeah, it's an air sensor, or it's some simple switch. I had an experience when I was farming in Virginia. We actually had to hack a John Deere piece of a tractor and be able to get easy codes. I think it was just two simple sensors that cost $20 a piece to replace, but it would have cost us $700 to have the guy come out and tell us it was two sensors. And that there's a lot of information out there. There's a couple Viceland interviews that they did with farmers a couple years back when all this stuff was starting up, where they were having to find ways to go around manufacturers just to be able to keep their machines running. And that's not really right. You want to create a good relationship with the person who's spending $200,000+ on a piece of equipment. It's kind of hard when we have to rely on him coming out with a laptop all the time. And downtime is what costs you the most money. And if it's just sitting out in the field,
Yes.
can't really afford that.
No, that those aren't very good stories you're telling us. That's for sure. Chris?
Thanks, Toby. I'm struck that I don't even know what a craw is, but this issue really sticks in my craw. It's so irritating. Are you saying that in your case, because you know how to fix things, that you need somebody with an authorized person to come out with a laptop? They tell you it's sensor X, sensor Y, and then you can replace the sensor. You just need that initial plug-in before you can even know where to begin. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So I mean, the simple answer is yes. If they would release, so like with, for instance, diesel pickup trucks, you can go out and buy $1,000 monitor, plug it into your truck. It gives you all of the diagnostic codes. You can see what it needs to happen. If it's something simple, I can take care of it. If it's something large, it goes to the shop. So it'd be within the same realm with all these farm tractors of, if it's a simple sensor. I mean, one of the examples, it was a combine that I ran. It was literally the guy plugged it in. It was a stupid sensor that all he had to do was hit, I think, like F2, and it cleared itself. Well, yep, you're back and going. Well, I mean, I could have done that.
Right. For the price of one visit, you could get the equipment, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all know Peter Sterling used to work for the Senate, and he always impressed me because he could run the diagnostics on his Toyota. It's the same thing. For a long time, he couldn't buy those, and people started working through the legal system, and now he has one that could tell you what's wrong with your car. But all right, that's helpful. So it's not just, because sometimes it also comes up that it's it's parts, but for by and large, it's the diagnostics that's hanging you up, it sounds like.
Yeah, and that's the biggest issue for me is diagnostic, just to keep the machine running so that I understand exactly what's going on day to day. If anything starts failing, I should be able to see it before it fails and cost me $2,500 when it's $20 for a repair that I can do out in the field really quickly.
And do you own this equipment outright, or are you leasing it, or how's that work?
So right now I own two pieces of older equipment just because I really don't have the funds to feel comfortable owning such a large piece of equipment that I have to rely on somebody else. I've been burned a bunch of times with different manufacturers of tractors, not at my own farm, but farms I help at, where it's okay, well, let's sit around and wait, whether it be farming and construction. I ran into the same issues, but it's just the whole downtime where you sit there and have to sit there and worry and think and wait, and no one's really got time for that.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I think you and I, Toby, are on the same page. I run big trucks. My son, grandson, and the rest all have new stuff that if you don't get to a computer, you haven't got any idea. I run one that's a little bit older before that age, and I get along just as good as they do. You're better usually, because they have to go to Burlington all the time to plug their rig in.
Yeah.
Chris, I think, had a question.
Yes,
Chris, you have your hand up,
yes, sir. I could,
Chris Gibson?
yes, sir.
Yeah,
I represent Harvest Equipment. I've been in the John Deere business for a little over 20 years, so I've seen a lot of this technology come into place. I hate to rebut what Toby's saying, but that is not the case. You can buy a customer service advisor tool from John Deere that you can plug in and do everything that he is asking them to do.
did you have something else you wanted to say though, in regards to being, testifying in regards to reliable and all the charges? Like what if an owner calls you folks for service, is there must be a service fee, and then if you have to plug in, is there a plug-in fee? And could you explain a little bit of that to us?
If a customer calls us for service, many of these machines have onboard diagnostics that will throw trouble codes. At that point, we can look up and see if it's a trouble code that he can easily fix in the field. We do that readily with no charge. I would say we do that 40 or 50 times a week. But if we do have to go to the field, there is a service call fee to go in and out and plug into the machine. Like I said, customer service advisor would allow, which is already available, will allow the customer to do these things, but they're going to need that level of expertise with the diagnostics to do that. We spend thousands of dollars a year training technicians so that they can go out and do that efficiently in the field.
Yeah, but if you get 40 or 50 calls a week from people, can't be that machinery is very reliable, or there's something wrong with something.
Go ahead, sir.
Well, I mean, that's quite a few calls. I mean, it's eight a day or so. Of course, I know you folks have quite a few dealerships, but
Right.
that's still quite a few calls, I would think.
What we find is a lot of this at times is customer induced. If they haven't, like in wintertime, for their DEF system, which obviously is a federally mandated system that we must put on the tractors according to the EPA. If they don't start that, if they just start their tractor and move it and don't allow that to come up to temperature, it will throw a code. It's trying to save itself instead of have a repair. That you need to run the tractor long enough so it warms up the DEF fluid so that it could use its proper function to run the machine. So many of our calls are operator induced, and it's usually a quick 2-minute call. They're back up and running. A lot of it's questions that they could answer if they actually had the customer service advisor or actually looked in their operator's manual. But we try to be convenient for the customer, and a lot of times it's like we're the easy button. You've seen that easy button at Staples. They call us, they get a quick answer, they're back up. A lot of the times it doesn't even affect the off function of the machine. It will just throw a diagnostic trouble code.
Yeah. Did somebody have their Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Chris, can you give us a sense of, you mentioned that the customer can buy a diagnostic tool from you. So is that normally done right at the time of purchase or somewhere down the line? And can you give us a sense of what that might cost somebody?
The service advisor tool is about $2,500. There's a monthly subscription that they have to pay just like we do as a dealership. It costs us several $1,000s a year to have access to this information. And plus we also send text to school so they understand how the thing works and makes it efficient for them. So that's available that time of purchase or anytime down the road, right through any John Deere dealer. It doesn't necessarily have to be us. Okay.
So, and this may put you on the spot a little bit and ask you for opinion you don't want to offer, but it seems to me, the phrase planned obsolescence, where a manufacturer is making something with full knowledge that it's going to be changed on a periodic basis, further realizing profits, because then the old stuff doesn't work anymore. It just seems to me, And I don't know how often that happens. I mean, back in the old days when the motors ran on points and plugs, it was a pretty simple matter to change the spark plugs and do that kind of stuff. It seems like, and I don't know, and that's why I'm asking you the question. It seems like the manufacturers deliberately kind of planning on people having to always depend on them at the further that you go. And I know that might put you in a tough spot to answer it.
No, I think I can speak to that some here. I believe that a lot of this technology is customer driven. It's what the customer is asking for. They want to know, in order for these machines to work properly, they need to know that what their rates in the field or what the phosphorus is in the ground as they're planting. A lot of these other things are federally mandated through the U.S. Clean Air Act. It's nothing that we could still build John Deere 4020 tractors from 1969. We're really good at that. But that's not what the market's driving. It's all technology based, and we can actually, these tractors can plant in a field within 1 inch from one end to the other accurately, and that's what the market is driving for land use, and again monitoring what the water runoff is and not overseeding a spot, so we know what their harvest yields are year to year, and that affects the nutrition of the animal, and they carry that all the way through their farm. These big farms now are all very, very technology savvy, and they know what's going into their animals before they even put it in the feed bottle.
So in Chris's case, if he had that tool for $2,500 plus whatever that monthly charge is, and he knew what he needed, he could just come to you and buy the two sensors, which were, I think you said $25, and put them in himself.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Like, speaking of technology, of course, we've had problems with water quality and runoff with phosphorus and stuff, and so we've been monitoring that for the last, I don't know, half dozen years or so, and trying to get that to be better. We had some fertilizer people in a few weeks ago, and they were telling us that even like spreading fertilizer in a spread truck, big truck, they have this computerized system in the spreader truck that's running from a satellite. And if your soil tests show that you need, 100 pounds to the acre or whatever, and then you get to the next acre as it's going down the field, it'll automatically change the amount of fertilizer that's coming out of that spreader rig so that you aren't over fertilizing. I mean, it's crazy. And the same thing with manure spreaders. They've got them rigged up, running off satellites. But anyways, any other questions right now for Chris? If not, we'll move on to Robert. And you want to introduce your wife or the lady that's with you?
Joan can do a good job of introducing herself. Yes.
I'm Joan Falco, Falcao, and we are, I guess, still new farmers in our 7th year. We have 180 acres that we use for rotational grazing. We're on the shores of Lake Champlain in a beautiful conserved farm. We do grass-fed beef. We do management intensive rotational grazing. So we just have grass all over the place. We have a tractor at about 125 horsepower, which puts us over the 75 horsepower limit, and we have to have DEF fluid. And that isn't a headache.
Yeah, we got this tractor kind of, we inherited it, and the DEF fluid is one of the issues. We're really locked in, as Toby mentioned, to needing the dealer to come out. Now it's not a John Deere, or else
there's more options with the John Deere, because
it seems like there's more options with the John Deere.
A lot more of them around.
But we only have one dealer we can go to. They have a monopolistic lock on northern Vermont, northwestern Vermont. And we've been saddled with some very high charges, some of which we don't agree with, but now we're on their bad list. So now when we call them, they often don't respond. And
They lost your phone number.
We think we're just going to get rid of this tractor and we're going to buy something that's maybe dear, but something that we don't need to have a serviceman come out with a laptop to service it. Maybe it'll be a Mahindra or something else from overseas. We don't want to do that, but what else can we do?
They use the laptop not only to diagnose the code, but often to like reprogram it. We've had to have ours reprogrammed, sometimes not successfully, after replacing a sensor or working on the transmission. So that's an additional charge.
I don't want to set up a sales deal here or anything, but you need to talk to Chris about trading tractors. No, I'm just kidding. But it sounds like you've had some really bad experiences with the vehicle that you own then.
We do. But in all honesty, there are times, as Chris mentioned, when there was one time when I was getting ready to hay for the day at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the PTO didn't go on. So holy crap! Call the dealer in an hour when he's open, and fortunately, I got an administrative assistant who was very kind and gave me, diagnosed some of the error codes, and the switch was part of it. So I said, well, I unhooked the switch and the connections and hooked it up again, and then it worked. Well, later on, I had to replace the switch, but at least I didn't lose that opportunity. When you're haying, you got to do it when the weather's right. And we just had that window there, boom, and we needed to do it. So, and we couldn't call anybody else. We do bring in some other mechanics, independent mechanics, to do things that don't require the computer, because otherwise the cost is twice what these independent mechanics will charge. But they're limited when you got to use that computer. They can't do it.
I wanted to say something. I wanted to say something about DEF fluid. Okay.
Yep.
Time for
Chris,
DEF fluid?
Yeah, you can talk about the weather if you want.
It's getting better. Mud season is here, yes. Okay, we use our tractor for haying and carrying large round bales of hay for feeding the cattle. So we don't need anything super fancy. But anyway, we've had times when the tractor down regulates. Raise of hands, who knows what down regulates means?
I do. It'll only idle.
Yes, well, we get symbols like this on showing, they are not codes. We try to describe the symbols. We take photos, we send them in. If the DEF fluid is not high enough, or it's not the proper purity, or there's a problem with the injection of the DEF fluid, the machine will give you a certain amount of time, and then it starts reducing the torque by 65% and the engine speed by 40%. And it could be just the sensor. And here we are trying to make hay when the sun shines. And really, we have very small windows for our first cut. It's like a day and a half, 2 days. We do baleage, so it's hay in a day. But still, we can't afford to lose even half a day. And then there's not always availability. So we often kind of feel like we're on our own. And we've had other farmers help us because we're small, they're small, and they can come help us. We've paid people to come do custom whatever when our tractor didn't start. And then people loan us equipment. So it's, we've been fortunate that way. But anyway, Okay, Chris has a question.
Yeah, Chris
Got two Chris's.
Chris.
So,
Pearson.
I actually do have a question for the other Chris, Mr. Gibson and Robert, and was it June?
Joan, Joan.
Excuse me.
Everybody thinks it's June.
No, I'm trying to listen to too many things all at the same time. Joan and Robert, remind me of you sort of saying, well, this is mostly available today for John Deere anyway, right?
Correct.
So then what's the problem if we have legislation that just ensures this is available?
Well, the concern is we have no problem with the right to repair. It's the right to modify. And if you get into that certain level of service advisor above the customer level, then you can modify code. At that point, you can then derate emissions, which are federally mandated. They all know such as their DEF fluid. John Deere, any manufacturer didn't come up with this. This was something that the federal government mandated we do.
But you don't have a liability issue if I buy my tractor outright, and then I mean, you see that on the road all the time. People put different mufflers on and noisemakers and whatever. That's not on you, is it?
Pollution's a lot different.
Well,
You take a truck and modify that depth
Yeah.
fluid and.
But come on, I mean, farmers are not really motivated to be polluting more. But my question is that on the dealer? Let's say I do that on my tractor. Is that on you? Do you have some kind of liability there?
We would only have liability if it came into our shop modified and they asked us to send a tractor back out that had been modified from original form. That's
Sure.
the difference being in your car and your truck and a tractor. We have an inspection process in the state of Vermont. Every vehicle gets inspected every year. Who from the state of Vermont is going to go inspect these tractors and make sure that this hasn't been modified?
What about, so you mentioned the diagnostics are available, and you said you could buy that equipment and then there's a subscription. Is that, do I have that right?
Correct, just like there is for any form of that type of thing. Yes, sir.
But then we heard testimony the other day that once a part is installed, that sometimes a computer is required to link it to the main motherboard. I don't even know what I'm talking about, but to basically tell the computer in the tractor, this new part is here and it's what we want. Is that also available, or is that something that requires you to come out after the part's been replaced?
On many of the parts, you can just install them. If you have the service advisor, customer version of service advisor, you'd be able to calibrate your machine and continue to go. That's all currently available.
But
so the only thing we can't do is the embedded code in the tractor, which affects emissions and safety systems. I could, if you have just a second, I could tell you a little story about what we call in the business is known as a shade tree mechanic, somebody that's not with an OEM dealer, had worked on a tractor and couldn't figure it out, was then sent to our Newport location. Well, this was an older tractor that didn't even have the computer systems that we have today. He had, without knowing to anyone, he had bypassed the safety switches. Our service manager went out, turned the key on this tractor, checked the hours on it, the machine started and ran over him. This young man has now got 2 broken legs and severe disability for the rest of his life. That all happened from the point of somebody not understanding how this works, working on the machine and then sending it out unsaved. There's a lot more safety systems on a tractor than there is always obviously on a car.
Toby, did you understand that? Did you realize that you could buy this if you ran John Deere equipment? You could buy the diagnostic testing equipment, or is that something?
No, I've known that for a couple of years, and I've been intertwined with many different brands of equipment. I've done diesel truck work, truck pulling, tractor pulling, and all that. So I understand how to write codes, change codes, tweak things and stuff like that. But for, it's easier for me to do a lot of that kind of computer work just of my generation and coming up with a bunch of computers and figuring out how to do coding and all that on my own. But for other farmers who don't understand how to get that diagnostic equipment and read it and understand it and look up the correct codes, I mean, there's that puts them at a disadvantage. Like when they're in the middle of haying and that thing goes down, they might not understand fully how to plug it in, where to read the right code, get the right information. And I mean, I've had issues with John Deere. I used to be all about John Deere. I'm about done with them. But Kubota, I know for a fact that there's been times where, like they said, you put in a part and then you got to wait for somebody to come okay the part because the tractor still doesn't understand it. I've run into that issue with grooming at Okemo with the snow groomers. There's always a flaw in the system. It sounds all great and gravy from the dealership a lot of times, and they do have a good point. They're doing what's right by them. I can't fault them for nothing. And without those guys, you know, a lot of the easier stuff isn't available to us. But and my issue is never been with the actual dealers like Chris. My issue is with the actual producer of the equipment, and it comes from somewhere a lot larger than just our local dealer. This is something that the actual companies need to recognize if they want to continue the relationship with us and our dealers to work fluidly together, that the larger companies need to, you know, start breaking things down a little bit more simple, because not everybody knows how to run computers and can create a code or, you know, go through there and reflash something really quickly to get the tractor out of a really bad situation.
Yeah, Chris, how is the manufacturer, John Deere's a manufacturer? Do they use you dealer guys good, or is it kind of hard sometimes to get updates and things from them?
Well, we have a very good relationship. We consider them a business partner, of course, in what we're trying to do. We have a dealer technical assistance center that we can go to if our techs are in the field and can't figure that out. And then if they're in the field, it brings them to the top of the priority list so that they get feedback in a timely manner. But I would like to speak to what Toby was saying about. There's a lot of chipping and whatnot that goes under these tractors that nobody sees. Again, that's modifying for original OEM spec. And not only is that modifying what the tractor or the machine was originally due, it affects the used market, because now that tractor goes to somebody else. They don't know that it's been chipped and changed. So that's all consideration. And from what Toby was saying, I mean, this equipment is available. If the people aren't capable of using it, what is the law going to do for them that tells them they're going to be able to use the machine to plug in and diagnose their own codes if they were to have it?
Yeah, Chris Pearson.
I guess I'd jump in. You know, to me, it's really straightforward when we think about the automobile universe, because this similar dynamic exists there. There are plenty of people that choose to take their car to the dealer to be repaired. That's their choice. There's also plenty of people that like to fix their own car, and there's plenty of people that like to use the neighborhood garage for whatever reason. And it's very hard for me to see why we wouldn't extend and the same parallel basically for anything, but in this case for farm equipment, where we have, you know, in a rural state, whereas we've heard, you know, losing a day on a key weather event could be really critical, and you're in the middle of nowhere, and so you've got, you know, it's tricky, and a lot of farmers are hanging on at the same day. So the equipment, you know, it's sort of a perfect storm. But I don't see, you know, I don't fault you, Mr. Gibson, for trying to hold on to your business as you should, you know, and nobody here is trying to say you're not doing a good job and you're not a straight actor. And I'm quite confident the dealers, if we had this kind of law, would remain profitable, just as the, you know, Chevy dealer down the road from my house remains profitable, even though the neighborhood garage can fix my Chevy. So what I struggle with is just the straightforward principle. Robert and Joan own a piece of equipment. Why should the person, the company that manufactured it, why should they have any authority over how they want to get it repaired. Toby owns equipment. It's his equipment. He ought to have basic rights to deal with it. If he has the cash to buy the tools, if he has the knowledge, that should be on him. Or if he wants to take it, if his neighbor is knowledgeable, why shouldn't the neighbor have the ability to buy what is necessary to fix that equipment in an hour instead of waiting a day until, you know, some authorized person comes? It just bothers me. And there's no, you know, there's a lot of horror stories, and they exist everywhere because a lot of this equipment is very serious equipment, but nothing is more prevalent and more dangerous than our automobiles.
That's not the case, but I'll speak to that after.
Well, I mean, to the scale, we have millions of cars. We have as many cars as we have people in Vermont. And so just the prevalence, you know, clearly more people are injured in an automobile than in any other kind of equipment. But
that's just the scale, yes.
Yes, and we're peaceful about the neighborhood garage. And if the neighborhood garage is not competent, the market will take care of that. And that garage will be shut down because people will stop going there because people are not stupid. And I think the same principle applies here. If Toby has the wherewithal, he ought to be able to fix it. And if his neighbor farmer does not, then he has the right to call you. And I can't for the life of me see what the justification is for something I own to be fixed in the way that I feel is appropriate. And I take that risk. You know, that's to me what we're talking about. And the same law is applied in automobiles. I keep coming back to this because we've been through this exact same trajectory in the last several decades where the industry was trying to hold on to the profit of how and where and when you could fix things. And the consumer pushed back, and ultimately now you can buy diagnostics for your car. You can get parts very easily. So I don't know. To me, there's a real principle here, and we ought to continue to look at this because it is costing farmers time and money and hassle, and not for what seems to me to be a full suite of valid reasons.
Well, the diagnostic tools you're all talking about are all readily available. All that stuff is available. It's just the embedded code and the changing of that is the only thing that we're resisting here. That's like propriety as part of commerce. I mean, it's all part of. And again, this wasn't something we drove. The customer has demanded that these machines have this level of technology between the customer and the EPA for the emission side, which is a majority of what I see here. The complaints out is on the emission side of the room here. All those things. There's more wire in one of these new tractors than there was in the first space shuttle. These things are way more complicated than your regular automobile. And if they have the expertise to plug in and repair, that's fine. We just don't want the embedded code changed to affect emissions or safety systems, and that's our concern.
Joan, I think you had your hand up, and then I'll call in Robert.
Okay, I just had
And then
collected
Robert.
some. I had collected some
I
data and
frozen.
wanted you to know that for us just to have somebody come to our farm, it's $225 just to show up because you have to pay for their transportation. Okay, and then it's $125 an hour. If we have our tractor towed, it's $400. And we contrast that to the independent people around here who fix other things that don't need the laptop. We've had one that charges $65 an hour. And of course, add that transportation additional. And then we had another one that charged $75 an hour. Now, if they have to pay for those expensive laptops and code, they would probably charge more. But at least we'd have choices, and maybe there would be more individuals who chose to make this their line of work. We're not like Toby, who perhaps could use it himself, but we sure can't afford to buy that monitor and pay the monthly subscriptions, but perhaps an independent can. And they would have lots of business during haying time and cropping time, and it would just open up opportunities for small independents. Now, maybe they can get that from John Deere, but I don't know if they can get them from our dealership. No one has, let's put it that way.
I can't speak to other manufacturers. It is available from John Deere, and look, there's people that are doing it. It's if that person can go out and do it at the level of expertise that some of my guys are, then that's be great win-win for you, I guess. But we spend thousands of dollars a year to keep our techs up to date and trained so that we can do things in an efficient manner and work through all those things to keep people going. We have techs on call 24 hours a day during haying season, and they're out and about, and we get to people as quickly as possible because we realize we're part of the farming community too. We're not just a big. I grew up in Vermont. My relatives moved here about the same time the Chittendens did, settled up in Starksboro and Addison County. I'm a born and bred Vermonter as well, so we understand all those facts of how farming works, and we have to be there for these people when things are down, and there's a limited window to get your crop in and make sure that it's in and so that your animals get proper nutrition.
Robert, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm delighted to hear that John Deere does provide these service stuff, but I want to, I guess, say that I don't know which farmers you're talking about, Mr. Gibson, because every farmer that I know, and I know a number of them now, they're smaller farmers in the most part, they look specifically for machines and tractors that are older, that don't have these computers on them, for just that reason, that they're easier to maintain. And I think you have to agree that the market for those tractors is pretty darn good.
I would say that they probably do, because that's their level of expertise to repair those things.
Right.
Again, we don't build, this is all, a lot of this stuff is federally mandated. All your DEF food, all that wasn't us. You need to talk to Bernie and Patrick about that. They forced this stuff down our throat. That's nothing that we tried to create here. We just try to comply with the federal law and make sure that people are up and running as best we can. And again,
Now,
some guys
Chris,
are very painful. Yes, sir.
We don't want you picking on Bernie and Patrick now. They're going to send us a check here in the next couple of weeks. We don't want to pick on them too bad. No, I was just going to say, I got a few acres up here, so in Troy, and I have a 656 International. It's about the same idea as a 2040, maybe John Deere, or,
Yep.
and 55, 60 horsepower. That thing runs every time I go out there. It starts, keep the oil in the air, filters and things changed, and it's just a bulletproof tractor. Let's see, Toby, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I guess for my one of my questions, and it's mainly towards the manufacturer side, and I don't have an issue with the DEF stuff. I know it's a pain in the butt, but there's reasons and rhymes to everything. So, I tolerate it, and there's a reason for it being in the machines, and it's all good because we are working towards fuel efficiency, because diesel fuel is not going to be around forever. But so for the whole programming side of it with the laptops and all that jazz, if you have a smartphone, Apple sends out software updates, and it just downloads to your phone for free. Now, I know with a lot of my truck stuff and the tuners and stuff that I've used in those, when software updates come available, those are just given right to whoever owns the programmer. I don't have to pay a monthly subscription to Smarty Tech or nothing. They just send me the code. I load it up on my laptop, plug it into my truck, and I'm out. So with these larger tractors that are coming out, and we'll just say John Deere, for instance, with those service codes, and I if I was able to come up with the money to buy the computer and all that, whatever comes with it, do I have to sit there and monthly update the actual service computer and then download different codes and then come up with different things just on my computer so it stays up to date with the tractor? Because all that stuff changes. There's all different kinds of software, hardware that changes, malware, all that stuff for security reasons. So is that something that is available if I'm paying a monthly subscription and I've just paid all this money for diagnostic malware? Does that come in with it for a freely update whenever you guys get a software update? Is that available to the customer just for free, or does that have to be a charged platform?
As long as it's not an emissions or safety related, it will go direct to them, yes. Otherwise, it will go directly to us. If it's emissions or safety related, many of that falls under the Clean Air Act again, and we go out and do that for free. Some of that we can do with our RDA system, that's our remote diagnostic link, that will link right to the tractor, and just like your iPhone, it'll update itself upon you starting the machine, and it'll tell you that, and you'll be up and running.
Yeah, but John Deere will have you go out for free, Chris, to update some of the emissions issues.
If it's a payload issue that it is the fault of the company, you certainly will. If it's an emissions related issue, or especially if it's a safety related issue, because John Deere is very, very conscious on the safety end of their units. So.
Yeah, that's good news. Yeah, Joan, you're muted, Joan.
That's Bob. Is there a scenario for renting out the laptop?
We do not do that because we obviously don't have extra ones just to lay around and do that, and so we currently do not rent those things now.
What would it take to do that? I mean, would that make sense, or you wouldn't trust the customer would use it correctly, or?
Well, we wouldn't rent. We're not in the rental business. We know enough to know we try to sell and do that. We don't rent anything. We're not in the rental business, so I wouldn't really speak to that part of it. Our stuff we have here, we have enough stuff to keep our techs going, and so we don't have extra of that material laid around, because again, the cost and the monthly fee to keep it up and running. And if we rented it, how would you have the expertise to run it? I guess if somebody had the expertise to run it, that would be fine, but we're not in the rental business.
Yeah, and what about if somebody, well, you don't rent tractors, but so I was going to ask you, if you rented or leased a vehicle, does the service go with that vehicle from the dealership if you leased a tractor or a big combine?
When we release that equipment, we also include a PowerGuard extended warranty, which does include taking care of all that stuff for the customer. Yes, so that is certainly available at the time of purchase. And actually, John Deere actually reduces the residual on the back side of their lease if they buy the PowerGuard to extend their warranty, so that everybody knows this machine's kept up to date throughout its lifetime.
Yeah. Good morning, Corey. Good that
Morning.
you got
Sorry I'm late. Had to get my brain tickled.
Yeah. Do you pass or not?
I don't know. I'll know tomorrow.
Yeah.
I was never very good at tests, Bobby.
Well, you didn't do very good to hear this morning. We marked you tardy.
All right.
So there, you know, I wanted to ask John or Robert, you don't have to answer this. I'd like to know what kind of a tractor you have, so I won't buy one.
We'll decline to answer that.
We'll send it to you via email. How's that? By the way, I did want to ask, we haven't been introduced to Mr. Carrigan or Miss?
Parent.
Oh.
It's
Gail,
just as well.
Gail.
You haven't missed a thing.
I'm the
You're
committee
talking about
assistant
Gail,
sitting in
that's
for the
not-
regular committee assistant this morning, who is Linda Lehman. She manages both the House and Senate, so sometimes she needs a little assistance.
I thought maybe you'd like to meet Parent. He might be your senator.
Hi, I'm Corey Parent. I'm from St. Albans, but I represent Franklin County and Alberg.
Okay.
Sorry, I was late today. I've been in quarantine for the last week. I had to get my second COVID test. I was exposed last week, so hopefully I get to come out when the results come back.
Oh, good. Glad you're doing well.
Well, I wasn't positive first time, so I haven't had any symptoms.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, lots to consider here, I guess. And I don't think anybody on this committee wants a local business to suffer as a result of us passing any sort of legislation. So again, Chris, I might put you, not Pearson, but Gibson, in a tough position. But if this were to pass the way it's written right now, can you estimate how much of a hit your particular dealership would get, or just maybe an average of any dealership that's a franchise that's selling this? In a sense, it's proprietary information that the manufacturer owns. But again, I think we need to be careful not to do, because I don't think anybody on the committee is interested in harming our local business people either.
I don't know how I'd really calculate that right off the top of my head. I wish I had a better answer than that, but I'm just going to honestly tell you, I don't know how to go about calculating what the impact would be.
Okay.
A lot of this stuff is already available, like we said. Nobody's using it. So, I mean, why would we need a law to change stuff that is already happening? Again, we're against this because of the embedded code for safety and emissions reasons. That's really the long and the short of it. I don't know if you people have seen these young fellows around. They call it rolling coal. There's black smoke pouring out the back of their truck. Doesn't look very healthy or good for us in the environment. To tell me that that's not going to happen on a scale with farm equipment, I think we don't know the farming community as well as we might think.
So your concern is more of a safety and emissions issue than it is economic.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Chris,
Yeah,
Senator Pearson?
Mr. Gibson's been helpful, a lot of information. Roughly in your business, could you give us a crude estimate of where sales is versus repair in terms of your revenue for the business?
I would say we're on a 40-60% sales to parts and service aftermarket. We call that. The sales business, as you know, you can buy your stuff anywhere today, and that's part of the way the world works now. So margins are what they used to be. And even though the price keeps going up on the service side, to pay a technician and find quality technicians, we all know that the labor force in Vermont is very, very, very tight when it comes to skilled people. We're actually promoting a program through our dealership where we'll pay for the young person's college as long as they sign up with us for 3 years afterwards. We're actually going to pay for them to go to school because we can't hire these people. We're trying to develop them. So it's a very, very tight market with the skills that we need out there to keep things going.
Yeah. Thanks. And we may never be able to predict if Chris's business takes a hit, what other businesses spring to life. That is a difficult challenge of our job, but appreciate the feedback.
Yep. Any other, Joan, did you have your hand up? Yes.
This is for Chris Gibson.
Yes,
Are all your laptops busy on Saturday and Sunday?
Depending on who's on call, I would say maybe not all of them, but if we have technicians on call 7 days a week to serve people.
So not all of them are busy then. I mean,
not all of them every second.
there are some days when they are not used by the business.
There's some days when they're not used by the business, but if one happens to break, we also need backup for the ones that are in the field as well. So,
How many do you own?
oh,
Am I allowed to ask? Is this proprietary?
Off the top, all our technicians each have one. I'd have to take an exact technician head count to do that, but I mean.
5, 10, 20?
Oh, let's say more than 20.
Yeah. Oh, wow, you've got five dealerships or?
Yes, sir. We have 4 here in northern Vermont and 1 in northern Maine.
Yeah, because we got one right here in Newport or Derby, and no, a very good dealership.
So we try to do the best we can to serve the community, and
Yeah,
it's all part, again, this is all part of the farming community, is all part of what we do too. All of what we do revolves around that. So.
yeah. Chris?
Well, just, I believe in the automotive universe, the diagnostics cable, is $80 or something. That's what folks have told me. So, did you say it was more like $2,500 for the purchase, and then there's a monthly subscription? Is that what you said, Mr. Gibson?
Yeah, we're in that ballpark. Yes, sir.
So, and you've asserted that there's not really a problem because people could do this, but the Farm Bureau nationally has endorsed right to repair. We do hear from farmers that this is an ongoing concern. So there is a mismatch, right, between stories. I've heard from farmers who are very encouraged that we're looking at this and are unwilling to come forward to talk about it because they're a little worried about irritating the dealer that they have to work through. That this is the relationship that's tricky. But I guess I was just curious. You sort of asserted this is not a problem. So why then would you think the U.S. Farm Bureau has supported the right to repair? And by the way, not from leadership necessarily, but members have brought it forward because there is an underlying frustration around these issues.
Well, I can't speak to all manufacturers. I can only speak to what we do. But I'm not a politician. I'm not any of those things. I just try to speak from experience here. But all that stuff is available to them. So why aren't they currently using it? Do they not know what's available? Have they not done their research? As you said, you thought that a cable costs $80. You don't know what it costs. So have they done their research? Who's
well, that's from
who's lobbying or pushing this issue?
My friend who owns the cable told me it cost him $75 to diagnose his car, any of his cars. But that's a good example.
We'd be happy to host any of you folks anytime so you can see our diagnostic tools and how they work and whatnot. We'd be happy to show you that anytime. That would bring people to a better understanding.
Yeah, it would be interesting to, have one of the tech go where we could reach out with the tech and have them show us how, if there is a problem, how it works and how complicated stuff might be. But anyways, we've got another crew coming behind you folks. Are there any last minute questions or concerns? We're going to be working on this issue as we move forward. And so if any of you want to, of course, come back the next time we have a hearing on this, you're certainly more than welcome. If you have new information you'd like to present, we'd be glad to listen. But anyways, if there are no last minute questions or concerns, I'd like to, thank you folks for your time this morning. Certainly appreciate it. And I think the discussion was good and certainly helped us to form an opinion in regards to the bill. Committee members, any last minute questions from you folks? Chris, you had a question or concern or statement?
I just pulled up what for our dealerships, less than 2% of our repairs require reprogramming of the unit. So less than 2% of the repairs we do in 5 locations require the reprogramming of a machine.
I'll be darned. Yeah, that's pretty good. Joan?
How many repairs require the computer for diagnostics?
We use it as a tool to speed up the process. I mean, there's ways to diagnose many of these things with a Fluke multimeter or with so you can do an ohms test, because that's a lot of how these sensors work. We use them on probably 55-60% of the repairs to speed up the process, because if we take the code that's out of the machine, we can dump it into our computer. It may point us to a direction in the tech manual to speed up that repair and save cost and time for the customer.
Yeah, I think that would be the most useful, actually, would be to be able to access the list of codes and what the problems might be from that.
Most of our John Deere tractors, anything built late model here, has all onboard diagnostics on the dash. You can pull it right up in the monitor and read the codes right there.
Right, but once you read the codes, then finding out what that code means.
Well, you can call a dealership, right?
You could call a dealership, or if you could buy the customer service advisor and have that information right there. A lot of the simple codes are in your operator's manual, as well as tech manuals are available.
That's Bob.
Yeah. Well, we've got the other crew coming in about 5 or 10 minutes. So, well, we're going to move from tractors to maple syrup next. So it's going to be a lot sweeter deal than what we've been talking about. But anyways, thanks a lot, folks, for your time this morning. Really appreciate that. And I don't know if you found out about this on our webpage or how, but we do have a webpage, and we try to get our meetings up, most of a week ahead. So if you see this coming back up or anything else actually, and you want to participate, there's a phone number. You call Linda or today Gail, but they'll give you the info and have you sign up. So with that, thanks a lot, and we'll see you hopefully again.
Thank you for letting me participate today.
Yeah, well, appreciate it, Chris. Yeah. So committee, we have a group, Dr. Haas and Steve Collier, that crew coming in next at 10:15 to give us an overview on maple syrup, the testing that goes on, and why our tests are different than the federal tests or the standards, I guess, rather than the test, the standards. So if you want to take a minute and grab a coffee or whatever, we'll